You think you know what the first hour of a nuclear event looks like, but most people have absorbed nothing but movie cliches and half-understood history lessons. The truth is far stranger, far more scientific, and far more unforgiving than popular culture ever bothers to explain. The first hour is not about fireballs or mushroom clouds, at least not for most people. It's about physics, psychology, and a timeline that starts rewriting your fate long before you realize the clock has begun. And if you ever find yourself in that hour, every decision you make will be filtered through the one question nobody tells you to ask. What exactly is happening to your environment, your body, and your society in real time? Let's start with the moment you see the flash, not the explosion, just the flash. You won't hear anything at first. Sound needs time to travel, so you get a silent burst of light that feels almost supernatural. If you're far enough away, this flash won't kill you, but it will scald your retinas with more brightness than your brain knows how to process. This is where the counterintuitive survival logic begins, because your instinct is to look toward it, to identify the threat, but your biology works against you. Your eyes read intense light as an emergency to decode, even when decoding it is the worst thing you can do. The first survival insight is painfully simple. Look away immediately and get behind anything, literally anything, that casts a shadow. Thermal radiation travels in straight lines like a cruel, invisible spotlight. A single parked car, a concrete pillar, or even diving behind a curb can mean the difference between superficial burns and full-thickness ones. This works because thermal radiation dissipates rapidly with distance and barriers, and physics rewards the person who breaks line of sight fast.
Then comes the heat wave, but not the kind Hollywood imagines. If you are within several miles, you experience something closer to opening an oven directly into your face, an insult of thermal energy that can ignite clothing, but often does so unevenly. People assume widespread instant combustion. In reality, fabric composition, moisture content, and the angle of exposure all matter. If your clothes ignite, extinguish them by smothering, not running, because running feeds oxygen and turned you into your own accelerant. The survival logic here is simple thermodynamics. Starve heat, and the fire collapses. It is astonishing what difference a few seconds of discipline can make. Now the blast wave is approaching, and here is where timing becomes psychologically destabilizing. The delay between the flash and the shock wave can be several seconds or even tens of seconds, depending on distance. The danger is that these seconds feel like the event is over, like the threat has passed. Then the wall of compressed air hits, violent, concussive, ripping through windows, tearing branches from trees, and turning debris into weapons. Your survival instinct might push you to stand and run, but the science is unforgiving. You need to be down, covered, and stable before the wave arrives. People who crouch low or go prone survive not because of luck, but because the blast wave travels horizontally with much more destructive force than it exerts a foot or two above the ground. This is how pressure dynamics work. Air seeks to push what it can move and blow past what it cannot.
As the wave passes, the landscape becomes unrecognizable. Glass everywhere, dust hanging in the air like it's learned to breathe on its own. This is the moment when many people make a catastrophic mistake. They panic and run blindly. But in the first hour of a nuclear event, mobility is dangerous if you do not understand what is happening in the atmosphere around you. Radiation at this stage does not behave like a uniform fog. It behaves like weather. Fallout is particulate matter, ash fused with isotopes, that rises into the sky and then begins drifting down depending on wind speed, wind direction, and the height of the detonation. If the blast was a high-altitude airburst, fallout might be minimal or delayed. If it was ground level, the dust begins falling like a toxic snowstorm within minutes to tens of minutes. The survival logic is brutally consistent. You are safer indoors than outdoors, even inside a damaged structure, because walls, even thin ones, cut your exposure drastically. Radiation intensity decreases according to the inverse square law, and shielding materials absorb different percentages depending on density. Even a basement or interior hallway reduces dose rate dramatically. Now comes the most misunderstood part of the first hour: time compression. Every minute feels like a decision you cannot afford to hesitate on. You might think you must flee immediately, but the smarter move is counterintuitive. Shelter first, move later. The reason is in the decay curve of radioactive particles. Fallout loses about half its intensity within the first hour due to short-lived isotopes burning themselves out. This is why trained emergency managers emphasize the shelter for 1 hour, relocate strategically later model. It works because decay physics favors patience, not panic.
Inside your shelter, you experience the shift from physical danger to psychological warfare. Your brain starts running scenarios. Where are your loved ones? What is the government doing? What happens next? The body's stress response floods you with cortisol and glucose, sharpening focus, but also distorting time perception. This is where the second survival insight emerges. You must regulate your information intake. Noise, literal and figurative, becomes your enemy. Dust may be in the air, alarms may be sounding, objects may still be settling from the blast, but your goal is clarity. Take inventory of injuries, resources, and structural stability. You don't need a perfect bunker. You just need barriers between you and fallout. The logic here is environmental triage. Stabilize your microenvironment before worrying about the macro environment. At this point, communication becomes a puzzle. Power outages are likely. Networks may be overwhelmed or offline. Radio waves, however, behave differently under disrupted infrastructure. A basic battery-powered radio may still pick up emergency broadcasts because transmitters operate from hardened locations and because radio propagation isn't dependent on consumer networks. If you have one, this becomes your tether to reality. If not, you default to timeline expectations. Authorities will prioritize medical triage zones, fallout mapping, and evacuation corridors, but these take time to coordinate. Understanding this helps you resist impulsive movement that could carry you into higher radiation zones.
Now the next survival insight enters. Contamination is not the same as exposure. Fallout particles on your clothes are dangerous because they emit radiation at close range, but they can be removed. Exposure is absorbed dose, which is cumulative and unerasable. The distinction matters because many people assume they are doomed once dust touches them, leading to fatalistic decision-making. In reality, carefully removing outer layers of clothing can eliminate up to 90% of external contamination. This works because fallout particles adhere loosely and shed with friction and displacement. As you approach the tail end of the first hour, you confront a new challenge: the shifting behavior of other people. Some remain calm, others fracture internally. Crisis psychology shows that most people freeze rather than flee, and those who do act often swing between altruism and erratic improvisation. This is your sixth survival insight. Leadership emerges from clarity, not strength. If you can articulate what you know about fallout timing, sheltering importance, and exposure mechanics, you become an anchor for anyone near you. Community coherence, even in small clusters, dramatically improves survival outcomes because coordinated behavior reduces unnecessary outdoor exposure and supports basic needs like first aid and resource sharing.
Finally, as the 60-minute mark approaches, the noise inside the crisis quiets just enough for a new question to surface. Now what? This is where the longer-term strategy begins. Mapping safe routes, determining when to move, calculating wind direction, and planning access to cleaner structures or official shelters. But none of that matters if you mishandle the first hour. The decisions you make in these 60 minutes determine the baseline of your radiation dose, the stability of your shelter, your psychological footing, and your chances of linking with emergency services once the broader response begins.